Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, where we talk to innovators who are rewriting the DNA of healthcare. Today, we are joined by Marijo, MJ Montgomery, Vice President of Sponsorship Sales at CheckedUp, a pioneering specialty point-of-care company that's revolutionizing new healthcare brands connect with patients and healthcare professionals. With over 20 years of experience in healthcare technology, sales, and marketing, MJ has built an impressive career spanning companies like HealthGrades, ShareCare, RealAge, and AccuWeather. For the past 7 years, she has been instrumental in driving CheckedUp's growth, specializing in sales strategy, team building, and digital marketing solutions that bridge the gap between healthcare brands and people they serve. MJ's expertise in point of care solutions and her deep understanding of the healthcare ecosystem make her uniquely positioned to share insights about evolving landscapes of healthcare marketing and critical role technology plays in improving patient outcomes. Welcome, MJ, to Health Tech Heroes.
Thank you, Vasa. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad you're here, Mary. I think there'll be great learning for us.
Yes, looking forward to having this discussion for sure.
MJ, let's start from the beginning. You have background in communications and political science, yet you have built this incredible career in healthcare technology. Can you take us back to the pivotal moment where you realized healthcare was your calling? What was it about the industry that captured your heart and made you think this is where I need to be?
So really, I did start my career actually as a reporter for newspapers and really kicked everything off that way and eventually moved into advertising in print, which really then brought me to the world of digital advertising in 1999, believe it or not, to the point where I went to work with AccuWeather selling digital advertising. And my father said to me, what is this internet thing? Are you sure you want to leave a good, lucrative job for this internet thing? So that was really where I got into digital advertising. And then really the foray into the healthcare world was RealAge. When I joined RealAge, it was an early startup company based on the RealAge test that was created by Dr. Michael Roizen, who worked closely with our chairman, Charlie Silver, around the concept of how we live our life is measurable in your real age. So the real age test was about a 20-minute health assessment going through all sorts of questions, not only related to your health profile, but your social profile, your activity levels. And it took about 20 minutes to fill it out. And this was done on their website, realage.com. People were able to find out, look, based on all of these choices or based on my history and the information I provided, maybe your birth date is 35, but your real age, because of certain things, is 45, or the opposite, 25. And then really working with consumers to educate them on better ways to live younger and healthier. So that was really the early foray into kind of healthcare for me. And my passion really arose from the fact that people are responsive. People are looking for concrete information on how to live healthier and younger. I was in sponsorship sales with RealAge as well. So then working closely with the different healthcare brands, understanding their goals as well, which was to align with what patient needs are, what are the tools that can be provided, and then ultimately what is the best pathway to care. So that really kicked off my interest and really following the evolution of this patient-centric approach that really started to take legs with the website and the ability of patients to do their own research and find out more.
Mary Jo, initially you had a challenge from your family. Hey, internet may not be a stable way to go. And then you got into real age and internet and very early days on the web page. Now you are a leader in this area. What were the earlier challenges when you got into sales in healthcare, and not just healthcare, the concept of real age might be a newer concept to a lot of patients. And not only that, entering the data in a web page might be a newer concept too. So I'm sure you faced a lot of challenges early on in the days. And how did you deal with it? What was the key? Was there any incident or any occasion that was profound for you that said, like, yeah, I can do this?
Age was actually a subject of the Oprah effect, where she started featuring the Real Age test and featuring Dr. Roizen on her show. So that was an amazing platform to get the message out there regarding Real Age and the test. Not only Oprah, but several publications really started promoting this metric that you could have easy access to on websites to learn how to live younger. So then really watching the evolution of the company itself and the amount of people that were not only taking the Real Age test, but then opting in for email information at the time, which was fairly new and different. There was also the Real Age book. So early days where people may not have had access to the website, there was the Real Age book. And then ultimately more books came out under You, the Owner's Manual that was co-authored with Dr. Mehmet Oz. So we really kind of started this movement, if you will, to understanding your health and really taking a proactive approach. It was interesting when I would started calling on the clients in the pharmaceutical world. Pharmaceutical advertising was still kind of in its infancy. The ability to market prescription drugs was fairly new as well. So when you look at the dichotomy between, not only a new trend of advertising, but then the new trend of internet is really figuring out what was the best way to merge these two, especially within the confines and regulations of med legal. So, I would say that we definitely face some challenges. We'd have brands wanting to jump right on, appreciated the fact that they were aligning with an independent content provider on education, but still being able to get their information out to consumers about the benefits and risks, of course, of their brands as a potential option. So a lot of the programs back in the early days, they would agree to do a program and we'd be looking at 9 months before the program could make it through med legal and all the confines of a new industry really that was evolving.
And I can see a lot of challenges that have come up, and but also the positive things that you have been a pioneer in establishing these things. And it does not just take one channel; it takes multiple channels, like the book and then Oprah show, and just talking about this, reaching out to the pharmaceutical company. There are a lot of things that go hand in hand. That's an excellent work that has established an important concept in the industry. I didn't have known that until I heard for the amount of multi-channel approach that you have had. That was really good. The next question is a two-part question. You have spent 20 years in this field. One is of inspiration, one is of the drive. And I would love to hear what inspired you to get into healthcare first and make this your path. And the second question is, what drives you? What is that major drive that keeps you in this and makes you wake up every day morning and say that this is what I want to do?
I would say early on, being able to shift my mindset to finally understand that self advocacy was a real thing. I come from a generation where my parents, it was what the doctor said. We followed the doctor's orders. You didn't challenge. They were the end all be all. And then with the evolution of my career, starting with Real Age and my subsequent roles, understanding that self advocacy for those that you're taking care of. In my case at the time, it was aging parents and young children, that it's okay to ask questions, obviously being respectful. Way early days, you never wanted to say, oh, I went to WebMD and I have XYZ. There was kind of the crazy patient. And early on, I think healthcare providers were maybe rolling their eyes a little bit like, or here we go, internet doctor. as a degree. So it's understanding that that's not the end all be all, but really learning the importance of being educated on your own health, being educated on those that you're a caregiver for, and really advocating across the board um, is really, kind of where my passion was. And then subsequently, as my parents aged with, not straightforward health issues, really feeling confident that I could ask the questions and I could do research into could it be this condition or that condition, or what are the treatment options? My mother struggled for years with COPD, which is a terrible disease. And I know just having frustration a lot with the treatment options at the time were strictly inhalers primarily. And you have a person with such a severe lung disease, and you're expecting them to inhale medication. What are the options we can do here? I understand what the standard of care is. I understand, but she's not getting better. So I don't know that I would have ever been in that situation where I would have asked those questions or really been a self advocate. So that really hooked me into working kind of in this industry because, on top of that, because I work with different pharmaceutical brands all the time, I'm consistently researching the different conditions that are out there, the different options that are out there, just because they're my clients. The pharmaceutical brands are my clients. And I need to understand about their brands, what their challenges are, what are the patient journeys to get on particular brands. We have first line therapies, second line therapies, third line that, you know, I find that I'm very passionate about this. I didn't have the grades or the wherewithal to ever attend med school, so this may be good. And my father worked Johnson Johnson for a majority of his career on the accounting side, but the pharmaceutical world was kind of always around me through my whole life. It almost was a little bit like coming home and really enjoying maybe a little bit of the reporter in me as far as digging into the research and understanding what the challenges are for my clients, but then also what are the challenges for the patient as well.
I'm really sorry about your parents' health, and glad that you were on their side to help them out and navigate sometimes the dramatically changing landscape for the pharmaceuticals. And yeah, COPD still is a high unmet need, I believe.
There are some new things coming out. Dupixent but a brand just got approved, which is an injectable, which hopefully that will give um, patients significant relief.
Just coming directly into CheckedUp and diving into what CheckedUp does, for our listeners who might not be familiar, can you paint a picture of what CheckedUp does and how your specialty point of care platform is transforming the way healthcare brands engage with both the patients and healthcare professionals? And what makes your approach unique in this crowded marketplace?
So interestingly, when I joined Checked Up, it was very similar to RealAge. RealAge was a startup at the time. When I joined Checked Up startup, we are founded and our CEO is a practicing physician, surgical ophthalmologist. And when I began talking to them and understood the foundation of what the company was founded on, it really resonated with me. So, Physician Starts the company is focused on what is the best way to efficiently but effectively educate patients in the clinical setting. We're looking at a situation where we're faced with a significant shortage of physicians, but more patients than ever, especially as we have the different generations aging into the healthcare system and getting into the healthcare system a lot younger than previous generations. So we're looking at less physicians and more patients, but no additional time, right? So physicians now are in a situation where how can they see the most amount of patients, but still give those patients the best care? And that was the foundation for the early days and what CheckedUp has become, which is a point of care platform, both digital and print, within the clinical setting. So as far as the tactics, it's the waiting room television that features CheckedUp programming based on the specialty. So our programming in the waiting room in an oncology office looks very different than our programming in the waiting room of a dermatology office. So as a company is really understanding what is the mindset and needs of that patient as they're sitting in that waiting room preparing for their appointment. So that really aligned with the fact that it's patient education, but being respectful and understanding of the needs. And then once they leave the waiting room, we have digital wall boards. So large digital wall boards that reside in the exam rooms that really provide valuable resources that the healthcare provider can actually detail the patient. So they can show anatomical diagrams where they can actually annotate on there based on this conversation they're having with the patient. So they're giving a visual education on the condition that they're there for. Also, we have brand information within there. So if a treatment option is XYZ brand, there's digital materials available on the wallboard as well. So whether it's the patient brochure or copay card information, maybe a symptom checker. Again, making it efficient and effective for physicians, healthcare providers to educate their patients in a constrained time, doing so visually. And then this material that the healthcare provider goes with the patient can then be emailed directly to the patient's email, the caregiver's email. So all that follow-up information is then available right when they get home to review, as well as the caregiver can review. And it limits the time of the doctor using those old examples of the plastic hearts and things they took apart that the patient forgets when they walk out. They don't have to run around looking for, this is the treatment I'm going to go for. Where is that patient brochure? Oh, we ran out of the patient brochure. Right. So all of those things are about taking time away from the actual education of the patient. And we really want to make it as efficient and effective as possible. And where the clients come in, all of those technologies are free for the office, for the healthcare providers. It is supported by advertising, but it's very seamless integration on both technologies that really is focused on bringing value and education to the patient.
So you have digital and also printed material, right? That you can hand over to the patients, and usually the digital and the printed material will be not so much the printed material, but the digital material will be personalized to the patient needs at that point of care. Is that right?
Yeah, so be personalized based on the communication that's happening between the physician and the patient in the exam room.
So that is not like one structure that is available and you cannot do anything about it just because it is digital. You can get into multiple layers and be very specific about the training itself. So this is not just easier communication, it is also an enhanced communication, I would imagine.
Because you're enhancing, not only providing visuals of like the anatomical diagrams, but providing detail, condition education. So if someone has eczema, here is education about what eczema is. Here's just some daily tips on products to use, what's some consistent healthcare to kind of prevent flare-ups, et cetera. So everything is housed within the wall board, which makes it very easy for the physician to go through it, to make sure they're not missing anything, right? Because they're on that short time. They can create their own workflows. So the physician can really personalize it to the type of patients that they're seeing. And then ultimately, the education and the take home part of it really kind of completes that circle of allowing the engagement to really end up in a better qualified, confident, educated patient.
And the second part that I noted that it is completely free for the clinicians and completely free for the patients. There is no extra cost for the physician or the patients, or in fact
That
the
is
insurance
correct.
as because they are getting paid through advertising. How does that work?
So that's a great question. It's a case where the pharmaceutical brands are utilizing a targeted vehicle. right? So understanding that if it's a dermatology brand, that they're really only advertising in dermatology, right? They don't have access. We at CheckedUp doesn't have access to any kind of PII information. So once that board is engaged with in the exam room, even though there's some communication going on, CheckedUp is not recording that information. So there is a big firewall between those two. So it's really provided as a patient education platform to the offices, both the healthcare providers and the patients. And the pharmaceutical brands are using it as a vehicle to reach patients and healthcare providers in a much more targeted but not personal way, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think it's bringing value to all the stakeholders here.
For pharmaceutical brands, how do you get as close as possible to your patient without risking data? You're not getting involved with getting close to patient data. There is none of that CheckedUp includes, which I think is what makes it very comfortable for the physicians to use. They know that we're not recording their activities with that one-on-one patient time. That is looked at, look, we're founded by a physician, right? Where he looks at that is sacred time. And we respect that fully and make sure that we are protecting all the stakeholders involved.
You have been in CheckedUp for 7 years, and obviously you are passionate about this activity at CheckedUp. And can you share a proudest moment that you have with CheckedUp where you said, like, yeah, this is why I'm here, and this is what is our goal? Is there any example, any KPI that you look at it and say that we achieved this?
There's a few different things. First and foremost, the receptiveness and the appreciation from our healthcare providers who really value these technologies. Kind of, again, like I said, efficient and effective for them. Something that really resonated with me was when we started in different specialties. We started in ophthalmology, obviously, ours. CEO and founders and ophthalmologists. So we started there, subsequently started adding other specialties, dermatology, rheumatology, oncology. And we were always focused on the waiting room, television, and exam room. What was interesting when we went into oncology was the nurse navigator. Then the nurse navigator saying, hey, CheckedUp, I'm seeing this in the exam rooms. I'm seeing patients on a day-to-day basis. This would be a phenomenal asset for me to educate my patients. So for me, that was a light bulb moment where we know that people appreciate the technologies. We know that the feedback has been positive. We know that if an office started with one television and one exam room wallboard, they're following up and calling us and saying, you know what, I have 4 other exam rooms. I want to get this wallboard in there for all of our clinicians to utilize. And then the nurse navigator, again, it was that aha moment of this is really valuable. This is valuable to educate patients. The better educated a patient is, the more likely they are to stay on therapy, the more likely they are to be an advocate for their health, the more likely they are to consistently communicate with their healthcare provider. So it kind of had this broader effect. And when we did hear that from the nurse navigator, that was a big aha moment for me, for sure.
So expansion is not just going to newer specialties. It is within the specialty you have other expertise where it can be applied, and perhaps there are more aha moments we just don't know about, and hopefully we will get there.
Right. The platform also can be personalized based on the practice. So when the patient is in the waiting room, look, we can feature doctor bios. We can feature different events that location may be having. It's a real partnership to involve the practice itself along with our technologies, along with their providers, along with what's best for the patient. And it really has become a team effort, but personalized based on the different practice needs, the different practice patients, specialties, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that brings actually really well to my next question. Considering in each of these practices, and practices are different, within the practices, the stakeholders are different, and that brings a lot of complexity. And then you're also working with manufacturers. So that brings another level of complexity. Uh, Can you give me an idea? How do you handle this? What are these challenges that you face? What are the major challenges, one or two challenges that you face, and how do you handle these challenges at CheckedUp?
I think because there are different table stakes within the company and departments within the company, we have a very strong, what we call provider team, where their role is to work closely with the different practices, identify what their needs are, and kind of align with them accordingly. One of the challenges there when we're getting with the bigger hospitals and health systems, it's a lot easier lift to work with kind of an independent office that the office manager and the physicians make the decision on what technologies they're using in their office. When we work with hospitals and larger health systems, there's definitely a longer time period. So we have to go through IT, we have to go through privacy. That is, definitely a longer lift, but the hospitals and health systems look at it as a competitive advantage because they are utilizing the latest technologies and patient education that's available. And CheckedUp works very closely with kind of those broader teams to get the technologies in the offices and align with their needs. So that just takes a little bit more time than some of the smaller independent offices that we work with. But with a majority of offices now becoming part of kind of larger, whether it's PE investors or healthcares or health systems, whatever it might be, we're definitely seeing a bigger shift. Now, the good news with that is when we get approval from kind of the overarching, it's very easy for the different groups within there to integrate our technology. So it's very, very simple that way. On the pharmaceutical brand side, it's been very interesting to watch the ebbs and flows over the 20 plus year career I've had, where early days pharmaceutical advertising, the end all be all really was TV. It's like, get the message out to the masses. There were a lot of big blockbuster drugs out there for cardiology conditions, et cetera. Now we're in a situation where most of the drugs that are marketing to patients have a lot smaller disease prevalence. So the patient pools aren't the high cholesterol pools as much anymore. It's a subset of a subset. So I think what we're finding is pharmaceutical brands are almost starting to align more with flipping the funnel, whereas your TV advertising is so broad and there's a lot of waste, even with some of the targeted advertising we have available today on TV. They're starting with what's happening at the office. Where are my patients? Who do I need to be in front of? And there's very little waste because I know that this is an XYZ specialty doctor that is seeing, because CheckedUp, we have overarching information on the doctors that we're working with and the primary conditions they're treating. So we're able to get super targeted without using personal information to get the right message in front of the right physician, in front of the right patient at the exact time that these discussions and treatment decisions are being made. So it's been very interesting to kind of see brand marketers flip the funnel and say, let me start here where I can get as close as possible to my key targets and have no waste. So that's been something that's been very interesting to watch with the evolution of the point of care industry, which is rightfully so, standing on its own and making a significant impact for brands.
I've never appreciated that part until I heard from you. One thing I want to check is that, like, instead of flipping the funnel, it is like cutting out the most expensive part of the funnel and getting directly as close to the client. Would that be an appropriate analogy as well?
Having insight into how did the program impact, but how did the program perform for the brand, and really utilizing it as a tool to be able to feel good about how they're reaching patients with the right messaging at the right time, especially in the climate that we're in today with RFK and pharmaceutical advertising. It's really imperative to make sure that the brand messaging is reaching the right people, the right time, the right message with the appropriate guidelines that have been provided as far as safety information and also encouraging engagement. So education, symptom checkers. It's with a digital platform, there's a lot more flexibility than just throwing your message on the television during Super Bowl to really using this platform to educate patients, to engage patients, and to drive valuable communication with their healthcare provider, but then also drive patients to have the best day-to-day decisions based on the different conditions that they're living with.
I think we are pretty well aligned on that idea of the funnel, how we are cutting off the very expensive part of the marketing strategy.
Yes, it's a lot more expensive. Point of care is definitely a lot more efficient for sure.
Thought leader in this space, and I would love to hear what's next for CheckedUp. What's next for a similar advertising marketing agency? It is a combined question, very specifically for CheckedUp and also beyond CheckedUp. Like if you're in this industry, if you're a professional in this industry, what are your thoughts on it, Marijo? What would be your advice for people in this industry? Where do you think this is going in next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years?
I think for sure that patients will continue to be better self advocators. I think as far as checked up, we're always looking for the best way to provide tools and educations to patients, meet them where they are. So we've seen tremendous growth over the last 7 years but always aligning with our mission, which is how to best enhance the education between patients, healthcare providers, caregivers. I think there's been, as far as where the industry is going, obviously personalized medicine is going to be huge. Now, what's interesting for someone such as myself in the media world, there's a little bit of a right, there's a big gray area, especially with the California rules. Using any kind of data to target people is really starting to get compounded with rules and regulations that are at the state level, California being the strongest one. Whereas maybe a few years ago it was about targeting the patient based on behavioral stats and this and that. It's really going down a slippery slope, and I expect to see additional legislation coming of cutting that off, if you will. So it's going to really, for pharma brands, understand where are the best places to reach their patients with the right message. Number one, I think AI is going to be huge. I've already myself personally gone to doctor's appointments where the doctor has asked me if they can record the appointment. It's great for them because it gives them less time to have to input the information. But as a consumer, am I concerned? Is there something that I say that could trigger a pre-existing condition? Like, is insurance companies going to get a hold of this? Or are there things that with AI are risky? And because the technology has kind of made it to market prior to the rules around it. I do believe HIPAA covers some of it, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that works as far as that world. But there are so many phenomenal applications that are coming out as far as early warnings. I know in hospitals, especially in the ER, there are now applications that are identifying the symptoms of a patient in the ER that can trigger potential outcomes to look at. So with the speed of AI being a lot faster than humans, this could effectively save people's lives. So there's a couple different sides to that that's going to be super interesting to watch. And, I really think it's for the betterment of healthcare as a whole. But again, it's really, everything is about patients feeling confident to self-advocate for themselves, physicians feeling they have the tools necessary to educate in the most efficient and effective way possible for their patients, for caregivers to have access to information that can be imperative on them helping their patients, as well as adopting these new technologies as they come along for the betterment of really all parties. How to make life easier for physicians, how to make life easier for patients, how to marry patients and healthcare providers with treatment options that are beneficial. It's an exciting time to see where this is going, and what the world is going to look like in 3 to 5 years, which at the rate we're going, it could look a lot different.
I hesitate to ask where it's going to be in 5 years because it's really hard. It's hard to predict where it's going to be next year. Like 5 years, it seems like way too far. It could be even about 50 years ago. It could be like, is it going in the next 50 years? And that's how much the
Or
gap
even
is that
20. When I to online advertising, my dad's like, what is this internet thing? Well, I was a little more than 20,
exactly.
25. Yeah.
And that brings me to the next question. It's like, really, what is that internet thing? What is this AI thing? And you have been through these transitions and you have really embraced this technology. My question for you is, if there is a leader or an entrepreneur who is coming into this industry now, what do you think is that critical mindset they need to bring to the industry that is going to be important for their careers, for their company, for their endeavors, but also for the patients and for the physicians, for the caregivers? What would be the mindset that you think is very critical for leaders and entrepreneurs to bring to the industry who are just starting their careers?
It's remembering all the stakeholders in the healthcare journey, right? So top level, it's patients and healthcare providers. The ecosystem of the health world is so immense. Of course you have your patients and the healthcare providers, but then we have the caregivers that are in a very precarious situation right now, with people living longer, people having children a little bit older than maybe before. So now all of a sudden we have this group of people, which I call the sandwich generation. I don't know where I got that from. I heard it at some point, but they're caring for aging parents, but they're also caring for young children. They need a lot of help and they shouldn't be forgotten about. They also need tools. I think when we look at where the pharmaceutical world is going, these rare disease states and looking at the pipelines for all the companies, there are just such amazing treatment options that will be coming to market that really can have such a positive impact on people's lives, that it's important for the brands, the healthcare providers to all understand, and the patients to understand what these new treatments are and what they can do for patients. Going back to the COPD example, there's the first ever injectable drug approved for COPD for a patient who's primarily doing inhalers. It's amazing. But whoever's coming into this industry needs to kind of look at, what is the goal here? What are we trying to do? Are we advocating for patients? Are we advocating for healthcare providers? How do they all tie together? And where does their product or company fall within? Keeping an eye on the pipeline, where conversations are going to start opening up about these very rare disease states that most people haven't heard about before. So there's going to be a lot of education that needs to go in there. A lot of these rare diseases take years to get the right diagnosis. So any of the companies that I've done quite a few startups myself is really understanding, what is the mission? Who are you trying to help? What are the kind of challenges, the obstacles in those arenas, and where can you make a difference? And I think it is about making a difference in people's lives as far as their health is concerned.
100% looking at all the stakeholders, but also knowing exactly what are we impacting eventually, trying to make a difference in patient's life. And that
Right. What
has
are
to
the
be, and
outcomes? The caregiver.
yeah, what are the outcomes too, and the caregiver too. And as you said, there's a whole sandwich population that is taking care of older parents and their children at the same time. So the demands are different and compounding. And as a final question for you, MJ, it give you 90 seconds. If you want to take a few minutes, that's okay too. Essentially, it's an open question. If I have missed something during my questions, or you want to reiterate something's really important, so the question is yours, the answer is yours, and the stage is yours.
It was interesting how, for myself to kind of take a look back on how my career has evolved. And it really goes back to believing in what I do and the passion for what I have for people. And, I think wherever the industry is going, if we look at it from a standpoint of how do we make the world a better place in this crazy world we call healthcare, that will direct us in a lot of positive ways and continue the positive momentum, and really being a partner across the board for all the stakeholders to, at the end of the day, make people's lives better and healthier. And, when I say healthier, yes, maybe that means you need to get an RX drug, or maybe it means that you need to focus on some healthcare habits. With whatever we do, is there a way that we can balance everything that we can, make it just a positive impact?
I truly appreciate your insights and your
Thank
passion.
you. Thanks for
And
the time.
and really, I've learned a lot, and there are things that I have to go back and rethink and realign how I think about things.
My pleasure. Appreciate it, Fafsa. It's been very great conversation.
My pleasure, 100%.